All right. So, what I'm going to talk about real quick for today's father's thoughts thing actually goes back to the whole idea of fatherhood in general. We call God our heavenly Father, right? That's biblical. Nothing wrong with it. Now, there are people out there who have a problem with it because they have a problem with their own fathers, and yeah, it sucks. But it's also kind of screwed up to take your personal whatever it is and put that on God Himself, right? Because if your father was a piece of crap, that doesn't mean the heavenly Father is. So, a little offshoot there, just some food for thought. If you don't like the idea of God being your heavenly Father because your dad on earth wasn't great, I empathize with you. I feel for you. I get that. But that is not a reason to say, "Well, I don't believe in God." No, because he's the ideal of what a father is meant to be, right? Us humanly fathers don't necessarily hit that ideal. Even the ones who are good dads have things they don't do right or things they mess up on. All that God doesn't. So offshoot done. Squirrel chase. We're going to get back to what I actually want to talk about, which is the concept of fatherhood and what a father will do for their children, right? Um, so I've got two boys, and I've got
Shipping, you got a copy?
that was my radio. Sorry, I've got a story uh, for both that illustrates the same concept in a different way, right? So my oldest Christian, when he was uh, still young enough that I carried him around everywhere, right? So I want to say maybe two. It's been a while. I don't exactly remember how old he was when this happened, but I remember what happened. So me and some of my buddies from college had gone to lunch at Buffalo Wild Wings or Red Robin or something like that. We'd gone to have lunch, and my wife was working, so I took the boy with me. So it was me, my son, and then four or five of my buddies. We ate, had a good time, fellowshipped a little bit. Then as we were leaving, I had Christian in my arms carrying him because that's how that's what I did because I was gonna have him walking through the parking lot, right? So I was carrying him, was walking out the front door to the restaurant, and as I walked out, one of my buddies had said something to me, and I turned backwards to respond to him, right? Now, what I didn't realize is there was one of those little curb things. It's in parking spots to keep you from going too far. The little concrete hump, basically. There was one of those right in front of me. So as I turned to look at my buddy, I hit this little concrete hump thing and started to fall with my son in my arms. Now, there was no thought process involved. There was no weighing the options. There was no, well, if I fall, instinctually, the first thing I did as I felt myself starting to fall with my son in my arms was I turned so that I was falling backwards and he was on top of me. I fell down, landed on my back. He landed on top of me. I had him held up. He was fine. I was fine. No one got hurt. But my first instinct that happened naturally without me having to even think about it was, oh, holy crap, protect the kid, right? Now, going on to my youngest, when he was probably around the same age, still fairly young, this was when he was first learning how to swim, right? We had him in one of those little things that goes around here and around their arms. I forget what it's called. A little floaty thing. And he had been swimming in the shallow end, and I was getting him comfortable with the idea of the water, right? And one of the things we had him doing was we had him stand on the side of the shallow end and jump in, and I'd catch him, right? Pretty normal thing. I'm sure I'm not the first dad to do that. But what happened was he had gone out of the pool and was supposed to be coming around. My father-in-law was in there with us, and he was doing the same thing with him over in the shallow end, and I was sort of in the middle of the pool, not in the deep, deep end, but far enough out that I couldn't stand up. And he saw me sitting there floating, and he said, "Oh, Daddy, I'm going to jump." We didn't say that. I guess he had the thought. I saw him coming. He ran to the edge of that pool, and he jumped at me without a fear in his heart. Just, whoo, Daddy's going to save me. And that's what happened. I saw him coming. I knew, well, he's going to be in trouble. And he did not have his little floaty thing on because we were trying to get him comfortable with not having it on. Um, and teaching him how to swim without it. And so he jumped in on top of me, and I caught him. But the weight of him pushed me down under the water. And I had my hands as high up in the air as I could, holding him out of the water. Now, I couldn't get him out from that point. I had my feet weren't touching the bottom. I had no place to push off from or anything like that. The only thought in my head was keep him out of the water so someone could come get him. There was no thought of protect myself, get out of here. It was just keep him safe. So those two stories, like I said, they have a similar message that we can take as children of the Heavenly Father, and that is that whatever happens, we know that He's going to have that instinct to keep His children, you, me, Joe Blow down the street. He wants to keep us safe. Now, having said that, how do we deal with the fact that sometimes things happen that don't feel like we're safe? Whatever it may be. It may be something personal in your life that happens where you don't feel safe. You get sick, you get hurt, whatever. It may be something at a more national or global scale, like wars or an attack on someone, that sort of thing. Whatever it is, there's things that don't feel like you're safe, and it's like, well, if He's all-powerful and He wants to keep us safe, why do these bad things happen, right? That's a whole different discussion. That's a whole different video, really. But the simple fact we can know is this. Whatever happens, whether it feels safe or not, God has a plan in that thing. So, the thing that happens that you don't like, that doesn't feel safe, that doesn't feel comfortable, that isn't something you want to happen, even those terrible things that are just tragic, God has a plan in that thing. And He says that His plans for us are for the good. Now, you may not see the good of the thing that happens this side of heaven, right? For example, something that happened in the past couple of weeks. If you're watching this now, if you're watching this currently, then you're not going to be surprised by this. If you're watching this later on down the line, maybe you forgot about it or weren't around or didn't notice it, whatever. But Charlie Kirk being assassinated. It's hard to feel like that's a good thing or a safe thing and something we like, right? Unless you're, some lefty ghoul who actually celebrates political assassination, in which case, please unfollow me, because, no. But the good that even in the last couple of weeks God has brought out of that tragedy is a sense of revival within the church and within people who don't go to church. I've seen plenty of things where people posted, that they hadn't been in church in 20 years, but because of this, they've gone back. And so, God's moving, not necessarily in the way we wanted, right? But He's got a plan, because He is the Heavenly Father. So if you are a father, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If you're a mother, you know exactly what we're talking about. You have an inherent design and desire to protect your kids. Anyway, that's my thoughts for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. Feel free to leave a comment down below, that sort of thing. And if you got any questions, thoughts, comments, whatever, all that,